Creepy guys in the forest. I've been subscribed to the sub for a few months now, but this is my first post, so please be nice. Last summer, I was with 3 of my friends in a relatively crowded public park near my house. Their names were Leela, Michelle, and Jack. Given that it was summertime, it was very hot out. Leela was wearing long pants and wanted to change into shorts that she had in her bag, but there was no public bathroom nearby, so she decided to bring Michelle and just go change in one of the wooded areas. Jack and I stayed behind and waited for them. After about 5 minutes, we began hearing screaming coming from where Michelle and Leela went into the woods. This was shortly followed by Leela coming running out, yelling, "Call 911! Call the fucking cops!" Michelle follows her out of the woods laughing, while Jack and I just stared at her confused. After Leela yells at us to call the cops a few minutes longer, Jack and I finally get her to explain what happened, which was there were 2 gross Mexican guys jerking off in the woods. Coincidentally, a cop car that was patrolling the area drives by, which she proceeds to run after, screaming once again about the 2 guys masturbating in the woods, and maybe we were just assholes, but Michelle, Jack, and I were too busy laughing our asses off to help her with anything. But anyways, the cops stop, she explained what happens, directs them to where the guys were, and off they go. A little while later, we see the police leave with 2 guys in handcuffs, so that issue was resolved. This was one of the funniest moments of the summer, if I'm going to be honest, but still, creepy guys jerking off in the woods. Let's not meet. A strange video on an ordinary afternoon. I honestly don't know if this story is appropriate for Reddit Let's Not Meet, as I never had direct contact with the persons involved. But I posted this on an Ask Reddit front page post about creepy things found on the internet, and I doubt it'll get read. This is my favorite subreddit so far, so I figured I'd share it with you guys. About 5 years ago, I was bored at home and browsing the internet in my downtime as I normally do. It was early afternoon, and I had the day off from a pretty stressful customer service job. One of my favorite things to do to entertain myself on the internet was to browse YouTube, but I knew it was first because you got to see cool copyrighted stuff before it was inevitably taken down by the Google machine. Everything was proceeding as usual, cup of coffee in hand and mouse at the ready, until I came across a video thumbnail that was different. It was an untitled video of a young brunette who was clearly crying. I clicked the link, and what I saw was deeply unsettling. It was a young pretty woman, perhaps in her early 20s, in a dimly lit living room. She was seated in a chair just in front of the camera. It was clear in her eyes that she was both crying and afraid. After a few minutes, a man's fist came in from outside the frame and punched her hard. I immediately recoiled in shock, and the punches kept coming in quick succession, the next one more punishing than the last. His hands were large, and he was delivering heavy blows that no innocent person deserved. He never allowed his face to be seen. What made it especially eerie is that there was no sound. The woman was in deep distress and crying profusely, but there was a complete and utter silence that pervaded the whole thing. Another thing I noted was how clear the video was, as opposed to some grainy found footage from the 80s or something. You could tell this video was recorded recently with a modern digital camera. This went on for about 3 agonizing minutes, and I just remember being sickened and rather frightened before the film came to an abrupt end. When I went to click on the channel name to see who produced it, I found that it had been deleted. That was it. Both the video and channel were gone, and I had no idea to report even what I saw. To this day, I don't know if it was some intentionally made extreme fetish video, or if it was some trapped and helpless woman truly in distress. It still kinda haunts me to this day. One afternoon. I am fond of taking bike strolls in our little village every afternoon. The houses in our village is a bit far from each other, and there are a lot of tall trees and some bushes. I like to go biking on a secluded part of the village, because it feels like I'm away from the city. Also, on that area, there's a long stretch of road leading to the main highway, which is a good place to go biking. The one thing I also like with that place is seldom car and people goes on that way. So on this particular day, as usual, I took my bike for another stroll. It was 5:30 in the afternoon, and the sun is going down the horizon. After a couple of distances, I rest for a while on the side of the road without getting off my bike at all. Suddenly, I heard an approaching car, dark blue pickup truck from behind, and parked close to where I'm resting. The pickup has a tainted glass window. The window from the driver's seat rolled down, and I saw an average-built man, in his 30s to 40s, wearing a jogging attire. He smiled at me and asked for directions on where is the nearest gasoline station. I always experience this kind of situation, and he seems nice, so I told him that before the main highway is a gasoline station, and there are also visible signs that can help him. As I was telling him the directions, he keeps smiling at me. At first I thought he was just friendly, but when he said, "Can you come a little bit closer?" I'm on the side of the road and he is parked like 5 to 7 meters away from me. I start to feel that this is not okay, because I realize that he's not paying attention to that direction that I'm saying, and then he gets off out of the car, but this time he started asking questions like where do I live, or where do I go to school, and other stuff that he wasn't supposed to ask in that situation. I'm starting to feel very uncomfortable at this point and very nervous as he was slowly getting close to me and asking me to get off of my bike. He still had the smile on his face and was telling me the whole time not to be afraid, almost in a whisper, and he just wants to talk to me. He keeps on insisting that I get off of my bike, which creeps me out even more in this situation. Before he comes any closer, I told him that I need to go and speed off as fast as I can without looking back at all. After that, I never took my bike out for a stroll again. So, to the creepy dude, let's not meet again. To the stalker who fabricated a relationship with me for a whole year, let's never meet again. Back in 2013, I was living with my ex at the time, who lived near a nice country village, and as I was in between jobs at the time, I picked up a job at a local garden center. It was casual retail work, fairly decent pay and easygoing enough that I could take coffee breaks frequently and wear basically whatever I liked as long as I wore my work polo shirt. It was walking distance from my ex's house and full of people of all ages who were the most lovely people I've ever met. Most of the regular customers who came to the garden center were usually sweet old people who would visit the cafe because we had free teas and discounted lunches for OAPs if they had a store card, so you often got to know all of them, and some of them we gave nicknames. Most of them sweet, like pink hair lady, a badass 80-year-old grandma who wore a hazel leather jacket and bright pink hair. There was also a camper van couple who used to drive a really cool camper van with a bright orange flowers painted on it. You get the idea. With the creepy artist man, though, he gave most of the young girls weird vibes. He wore a straw hat, was in his late 40s, had round gold-rimmed glasses, and would wear strange, graphic shirts with naked women on them, or professional pussy patrol sort of slogans on the back. He always wore ripped jeans, where his knees were always hanging out of them, which were always dirty with paint or mud or something like that. He had this weird half smile that would never leave his face, and a kind of leer that made people feel uncomfortable. He would take off his glasses and clean them constantly, which kind of made you feel like he was trying to get a better look at the girls who worked there, especially the younger ones, 16-plus school leavers usually. Anyway, it was a roasting hot summer's day, and I had gratefully accepted the job of watering the hanging baskets outside, where I could avoid the humid, sweaty heat of the greenhouses. I was wearing black shorts and my red polo, and my tool belt to prune and deadhead plants as I went. With a hose in my hand and my sunnies on my face, I was busy but enjoying the solitary job at the quietest part of the garden center. "Well, hello there." Out of practically nowhere, he slipped out behind some wooden trellises and looked me up and down, smiling with his weird small teeth. His eyes lingered on me for what felt like an uncomfortable few seconds, and I turned off my hose and asked him if he needed anything. He shook his head and kind of shrugged, still smirking at my legs. I call him CAG for ease. "Okay, sir, have a nice day. Let me know if you need anything." I turn to continue. "I've seen you here before. You're the new one." "Huh, me? Well, I've been here for 8 months now." "I must have met the memo that a beauty like you started. You have a nice tan. You look young." Thanks. I'm 23. Anyways, I have to get back to work." "Nice to meet you." And then he called my name. I suddenly remember my name badge and get slightly irritated that he now knows my full entire name. I make a beeline for the smoking area, where the tool shed was, with an excuse to grab some smaller gardening gloves, and by the time I returned to the floor, he had left. As the weeks went by, he would come into the store regularly, usually mid-afternoon, coincidentally, or so I thought, around the time I started my shift. Most of the time, I was the only cashier, so I would have to serve him. He would buy the most smallest, pointless things, like floristry wire or a tiny bag of birdseed. It seemed like he would purposefully make a purchase with the intention of interacting with me. He would make comments about my appearance, statements mostly like, "You have different hair today. Yesterday you had it down. You have new glasses. And that's a different lip color to yesterday." He would always announce my name loudly and deliberately during every interaction. I felt uncomfortable, but I was 23 and just politely shrugged it off. Around Christmas time, I was decorating the artificial trees, and he cornered me in the forest of them at the back of the store. He jumped up from behind one and made me jump, to which I was kind of pissed about him doing so because I dropped a glass ornament and it had smashed. He bent down also and tried to help grab my wrist and tell me not to touch the glass in that situation. His grip was scarily tight and forceful, and his hands were clammy and gross. I slipped my hand out of his grip and asked if I could help him with anything. That's when it got weird. He pulled out a leaflet from his back pocket and told me that he was an artist, and he had a Christmas art show happening in the local church hall and wanted me to go with him. He told me that he was a painter, and he thought I would like his work. I never indicated I was interested in art to him or anyone else for that matter, which is why I thought it was strange. I asked him if he wanted me to pin the leaflet to a local event board, and he reached out and touched my arm and said, "No, the invitation is specifically for you." He pointed his finger and jabbed it into my breast. He said, "You." So I'm standing there in a dark corner, obscured from view by artificial Christmas trees, just kind of cornered by this guy who was touching me. I cringed away and said, "I was busy with my boyfriend that day, sorry," and kind of scampered off. I remember feeling really strange after that, the fact he grabbed my wrist and jabbed his finger into my chest that way. I told a few of my colleagues about it, and they all told me that they would warn me next time he was in the store, so I could maybe hang out at the storeroom until he was gone. Well, that memo must have missed a few of the temp Christmas staff, because one day I get told by one, "Your friend is asking for you at the tills." It wasn't unusual for my friends to stop by, as it was a fairly popular place for gifts, etc., so I think it was maybe my ex's mom or something like that. I head to the till, and there he is. He's holding a piece of paper. I cringe, but he had seen me now, so I walk over and ask what he needed from me. He passed the paper over and asked me to open it. Folded up was a drawing of me, with exaggerated breasts and cartoon-like eyes, watering the hang baskets in a sexual kind of position. I kind of stood there, and he said thank you, but I couldn't keep it, as I thought it was inappropriate to take gifts from customers. I handed it back to him, and he kind of looked at me with his angry stare. He turned around and walked out without another word. By this point, I had had enough. I knocked on my manager's door and told him about the whole scenario that just happened and all the previous interactions I had had with him over the past year. He watched the CCTV and agreed that it was so strange the way he gave me this gross picture and told me he would talk to him if he came back. He praised me for my reaction to his advances and said I was doing the right thing and he would try and see him off next time. The next day was a Sunday, and I was not due in to work. My boss calls me and tells me he just received a call from HQ stating that an anonymous caller had called in to report a staff member inappropriately coming on to a customer. The staff member they had described and named was me. The caller said that I have been inappropriate towards him at work, offered to have sex with him and lead him on, and obviously promiscuous, and have been pursuing him for over a year. The jerk even described a fictitious relationship we had had and ranted loudly about how I'd been cheating on my boyfriend before hanging up. HQ luckily didn't believe a word, as a manager had already mentioned the guy to one of the higher-ups, but they thought it was wise to let me know about this crazy guy and suggest that I report it to the police. The next day I did just that. The officer I spoke to said he matched the description of a man who was a local pest, someone who would harass young girls in the local area. He was known to stalk girls in his car and had attempted to abduct a young girl 4 years ago. The police officers assured me that they would file the report and talk to him officially, and that he was not allowed in the garden center or anywhere near me again, and if he did, I was to call the police and he would be arrested. Unfortunately, though, it never stopped him sending a ranting letter to my workplace addressed to me, saying he would kill himself if I didn't take him back and received his gift he drew of me. Fortunately, the police saw this as an unsolicited contact, and he was thankfully arrested. So, creepy artist guy, let's not meet. Ever again.